Hey guys, today we're going to be making a English longbow. Yours can be whatever height you want. Usually it's about an inch shorter than the person shooting it. Mine is 68 inches, and that's about 8 inches taller than me, but that doesn't matter. I like a longbow. Anyway, the grain needs to be as straight as you possibly can. This bow is just a 1x2 from like Home Depot or Lowe's, and it works fine. Just make sure the grain is straight as possible. And that's about it. So this is the template. You might want to just pause the video here and look at this and write it down, take a picture or something, because that's what I used. So remember, you need to measure twice, or 3 times or 4 times, and then cut 1 time. Otherwise, your bow is going to get screwed up if you do one measurement or cut wrong. As you can see, I'm using a T-square or carpenter square to make sure all my lines for cutting this piece down to 68 inches are square. So when you measure, make sure that you try to use the inside of the tape measure more than the edge. Sometimes those aren't accurate. As you can see, I have it pressed up against the cutting fence so that I get a perfectly square cut. That is ideal for the ends of the nocks and just the bow in general for measurements, because this whole bow is about measuring. You have to get it all perfectly right or it doesn't work very good. As you can see, I like to wear ear protection, not mainly because I don't like to hear the noise, but because they play music and it's kind of boring just to do work and not listen to anything. So I'd recommend that. That's pretty cool and fun. So as you can see there, it burned the wood a little bit because I left the saw in there too long, and I guess it doesn't do that much. Alright, as you can see now, we are measuring out the entire thing. Off of that template, I added my own stuff a little bit. So 5 inches is for the handle, and then I tapered it off another, I think, ½ an inch. Tapered it off, so the handle kind of tapers into the bow. And 19 inches out is where you start your taper. 19 inches from dead center is where you start your taper. As you can see here, that's the measurements. So when you go to cut it, just set your table saw maybe even a little bit wider of a limb than you want. My limbs were extremely big. They were almost 3/4 of an inch thick. Almost. I barely took off. I took a little bit more off than the saw width, because that was that board is exactly an inch. Anything that says it's an inch at like Home Depot or Lowe's is gonna be 3/4. But I cut that one myself, and it's exactly an inch. So I took off almost ½ an inch, and so my limbs were a little over ½ an inch. 9/16 or no, it was more than that. It was almost 3/4. They're really big limbs. So make sure your saw blade's up as the right height. I messed that up, and of course it comes out right now. Anyway, so you can't taper anything on a table saw, so make a line where the last tooth comes down so you know where it's going to cut to. Mark it there on that line, and then run your handle line up to there, or where you're going to taper it into the handle. Make that line come up to there, flip it over, and do the other side, and then just take it over the bandsaw or hand saw. I mean, you don't have to do any of this with power tools. You could just use hand tools, but I don't like doing that. It's boring. Anyway, you can just use a hand saw and cut it, and so it'll look good by the time we're done. So as you can see, it goes really quickly cutting wise. It's just a quick zip, turn it over and zip it on the other side. I mean, not much to it. You could do this with like a bow saw, and cut it by hand if you had a vise and you had a pretty steady hand. It would take you a long time, but you could do it, and honestly, it'd probably feel a lot better, and you'd feel a lot more accomplished than doing this. But oak's a hard wood, very, very hard wood, and I don't believe that it would be worth the energy to do that for you. So just find someone with a bandsaw if you have a bandsaw, or table saw works just about anything, even a router table. You got a router table, then just route it off, I guess, or drum sander or something. Just take it off fast. So as you can see, I just took off the edges, and now I just gotta adjust the saw back to bandsaw mode. So now we're on the bandsaw. As you can see, I'm just cutting it out the shape I want, and I'm gonna do the measuring taper. Yeah, I'm measuring, and there we go. Now we got the tapered edges into the handle, and then I gotta go measure for the limbs. Yeah, it kind of took a while. Alright, now 19 inches from the center is where I mark it for the limbs, and then as you can see, I cut it back and forth like that. That was not a very good sharp blade, so it was hard to cut. I ended up sanding some off, as you'll see later, but they ended up looking 90% good. So this doesn't matter that much because you're gonna end up sanding it anyway, so I mean, to heck with it. So this piece of wood is also exactly 2 inches, where most of the other ones are gonna be 1 3/4, 1 1/2 even, which is kind of fine. But as you can see, I'm just sanding it. I just took my belt sander and put it in the vise because my big belt sander has too heavy of a grit and will just remove tons of wood at a time. So I just put a little one in with 120 sandpaper and went to work, and just shaping the handle and the limbs got to be nice and neat. So then you just take a file and you start your nocks, and you just start it with like a square file or triangle, and then use a chainsaw file and do your circle knocking about 1/2 inch from the top. That's probably the easiest part, I would say. I mean, it's just zip, 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 zip. It doesn't take long, but I mean, just take your time on this part, because if your string slips and you're in the middle of a shot or something, it's gonna throw everything off. You could hurt yourself. It's just not good. Just take your time. Make sure you like the way it looks and how it feels. It's just totally worth it. So yeah, just make sure you do that right, and you'll probably good to go. Make sure that they're at a 45-degree angle, pointing towards the belly of the bow, not the outside. Otherwise, it's not going to work good. And make sure they're at a slight angle so your string can really latch on. It's not hanging over at a 90-degree angle. You lose power that way. So it does take a little while to do it. It took me like 7 minutes to do my nocks, and that's like the 10th or 11th pair of nocks I've ever done. So I kind of knew what I was doing, but the first time it's a chore, I guess, and you just gotta do it right and take your time. So make sure when you're doing it that you try to get them as even as you can, and draw a line or something. Because if you don't have them even, the string's gonna hang off even, and it can be off center sometimes, and it's just less accuracy with your bow. You know, my bow, I'm gonna hunt with this year, and so had to be the best I could possibly do it. So just keep that in mind as you're working your bow. Alright, now as you can see, I'm like just very loosely strung it. It's barely on there. And I made this little T-post type of deal with a notch every 1 inch. And this is exercising the limbs and making sure it bends good. So I put it down a few notches to begin with, as you can see right there. And I just slowly moved it down. And just make sure there's no cracking in it. And I mean, if you follow the directions in this video and you use the right kind of wood, there shouldn't be, but there's always that one time that you have everything right and it still breaks. No idea why, but it just does. So yeah, just make sure it's even, and if it's not, then move the string in the way it needs to go. Yeah, as you can see, it's taken some serious effort for me to even get it down. That's like half draw or something like that, or 3/4 draw of it now, so it's kind of a chore, but it doesn't take that long. And I did this a couple times, only once on video, obviously. But I would suggest doing it a couple times, going as low as you can, or at least 32 inches is what I do usually. This one I did 35, because I thought about giving it to my dad, because I didn't know if I'd be able to pull it when we're done or not. And I haven't got it draw weighted yet, but it's extremely heavy pull. I shot it at a hay bale at like 15 yards, and it went through the hay bale. So it's a pretty powerful bow. So now feel along the limbs like I'm doing there, and just make sure there's no cracking and the wood's not splitting in any way. And you'll know it'll feel rough coming back, and it'll feel like you're getting poked by something. So yeah, just make sure everything's even. You don't want it to break or crack. Don't do anything with the handle except for round it off and make it comfortable. Until then, if you're going to do a pistol grip, wait till after this. Don't waste the time carving a pistol grip and then have it break. And as you can see, I just have one of my practice arrows from my other shorter bows, and it's this bow, I can't even shoot those at full draw because they're just too short 26-inch arrows, and I got a 32-inch draw. So as you can see, I'm just belting that thing down with all my weight, and it's getting harder and harder, but it's working, and I haven't had any cracking in it, and it's extremely powerful. And I just really love the bow. It's a great piece. Always remember, you can make bows out of walnut, yew, Osage orange, most any hardwood. Just make sure the grain's straight. So as you can see, I'm sanding it with a 220 sandpaper. It's working really well, and I like it. It turned out fine, and I'm just doing this because I'm going to stain and put a finish on it. So this stain got left out, so it's kind of chunky, and it got left out over winter. No, I just stained it with English chestnut because it's an English longbow, and because I wanted to. Anyway, stained it, put a high gloss polyurethane finish on it, and left it overnight, and it turned out really great. Took me about 4 minutes to stain the whole thing and stain it well, no splotchiness and all that. So it turned out good. That's what it looked like this morning. And then I went ahead and made a handle. It's probably the hardest part. I enjoy sewing by hand, but it's extremely hard for some people. And as you can see, I just took some red velvet and some leather and wrapped it around for the handle. You'll see that in a second. It took me quite a while, and it's about 7 layers of different situated leather. So there's the handle up close. As you can see, the crimson velvet looks really good. And the rest of this turning out really nicely. Now we're making my string, and it's just a hay bale string, and then I just wrapped it in thread like they do to make your own bowstrings, and the nylon thread works really well. That's what I'm using, and you'll see that in a second as well. Yeah, it took quite a while, a lot of wrapping. That's what it looked like right there. That's the center where you knock your arrows. And so here's my shot. Boom. As you can see, it's pretty windy, and I still hit dead center from however far that is. I was probably 50 feet away. I just moved back for each shot. Alright, so now it's going to switch, and I'm going to be moving back farther. And right about now. Okay, now we're a little bit farther back, probably 60 feet. And boom. That one was a lot lower. I accounted for wind that wasn't there, and I aimed too low, thinking that the wind would blow it up a little bit. And I missed. So here's my last shot. We're probably at 60 something feet, 70 feet. Boom, as you can see, and that went dead center as well. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something from this video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and get notifications for videos like this.